We fled Hedaya because of the war and my daughter's health condition. The sounds of rockets hitting the nearby port terrified her. She would scream and could not stop. Abdiya, 37, mother of two. I lost my uncles, my aunts, my grandfather and my grandmother because of the war. Sham, 18 years old. The war has made us lose our humanity and value as human beings. Life in the camp is tiring. Complaining to someone other than God is humiliation. We do not have a future, our future is gone. I hope there will be a future for our children. Hassan, 70, father of 10. Life is very hard, and I worry all the time about the safety of my children and their health. When the children get sick, I can't afford to buy them medicine, so I can only turn to God. Saeed, 45, father of 3. All these people are victims of the war in Yemen. They have fled hoping they will find safety. Lost homes, dead family members and friends are all the aftermath that was caused by the violent playground in Yemen. Now, these people live in makeshift shelters, not knowing when they will be able to return to their long-lost homes. The Yemen conflict, the world's worst humanitarian crisis. It's by far one of the bloodiest conflicts happening around the world, and it's also one of the most overlooked conflicts happening in the Middle East. The war has been going on for over 5 years, and more than 13,635 civilians have been killed since 2018. The media coverage of the conflict has been very minimal, especially when comparing it to the extensive media attention that Syria's war has received. We will dive into the causes and consequences of the war, but also a less frequently touched topic, which is the US aiding war crimes in Yemen? The Yemen civil war is a war between two groups, the Houthis and the government loyalists, which are supporters of the former Yemeni government of Abdrabbu Mansur al-Hadi. The Houthis are backed by Iran, but the government loyalists are backed by a coalition consisting of 10 countries. The members of the coalition are Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, Sudan, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Academy. The leader of this coalition is Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is backed by the US. The war began in 2015 when the Houthis, a Shiite group who received money and weapons from Iran, started a coup to overthrow the Yemen government. This government is backed by Saudi Arabia. The Houthis were angry because they claim that this government has discriminated against them for years. They believe they have been mistreated and say that their fight is a fair one. In contrast, many in the region think it is a shadow war between Saudi Arabia and Iran for control over Yemen. In March 2015, Saudi Arabia started bombing Houthi-held territory across Yemen. Many civilians were killed in these bombings, ranging targets from schools or marketplaces to hospitals and funerals. In August, the Saudis bombed the vital port of Al Hudaydah, severely damaging their main source of Yemen's food supply and any humanitarian and aid shipments. This greatly increased the chance of mass starvation in a country that is already very impoverished. These bombings have led to the UN investigating for possible war crimes, and while Saudi are leading the campaign, the blame also shifts to a great power that supports the Saudis, which is the US. The US has supported Saudi Arabia military since the Second World War. They have done so by selling weapons, providing aid, and training the Saudis so that they can use American equipment. Saudi Arabia has bought more weapons from the US than any other country in the world. In 2016, the US and Saudi Arabia had a deal of 20 Abrams tanks. They are listed as battle damage replacement, with the battle of course being in Yemen. These cells by the US also include cluster bombs, which are banned by the majority of the international community, and also F-16s, which are planes that the Saudi Air Force mainly consists of and are used to bomb Yemen. Till 2018, US even contributed by tanking Saudi Air Force by the use of huge tanker planes, KC-135 Stratotanker. Because of these tanker planes, the airplanes can stay longer in the air and they can hit their targets more frequently.
So why does the US support Saudi Arabia? The biggest reason was to prevent Iranian expansion after the Iran nuclear deal was signed. The US wanted to prevent Iran from expanding in Iraq, Syria, and in Yemen. The intervention was also part of the US counterterrorism strategy in the Middle East. Josh Earnest, former White House press secretary under the Obama administration, said that the goal is that Yemen will not be a haven that extremists can use to attack America or the West. Yemen is home to Al-Qaeda, so the US has a big interest in preventing them from seizing power. Also, a big reason for the support is that the US and Saudi Arabia have been allies since World War II. Saudi Arabia has been a bulwark against communism and now helps the US fight against terrorism. The US also issued a no-strike list to Saudi Arabia to try and mitigate civilian casualties. It included places like schools, cemeteries, and universities and places of worship. However, it doesn't seem as though Saudi Arabia has been following the rules. However, as the war raged on, the US became increasingly cautious of their involvement in war crimes, and in November 2018 the US stopped refueling planes that were bombing Yemen. In total, the UN estimates the number of deaths to be more than 370,000, with 2.2 million children malnourished. While peace talks fail, the Houthis continue to run the government in the capital of Sana'a. There have been some attempts to block arms deals with Saudi Arabia. However, the relationship between the US and Saudi Arabia is considered too valuable by many in Congress. That means that the US has been complicit in a lot of the war crimes committed by Saudi Arabia. The US is leaving a legacy of destruction in Yemen, and even though they have made some efforts to mitigate the civilian casualties, it's still not nearly enough, and it will always be a bloody stain on America's history.